Hello and welcome back to Women of Worth. Today we're tackling a topic that so many of us can relate to, perfectionism. You know that voice in your head that says, this isn't good enough or you have to do better? It might seem like perfectionism pushes you to succeed, but in reality, it could be the very thing holding you back. In this episode, we're diving deep into why perfectionism feels so overwhelming, how it creeps into our work, relationships, and even our health. But most importantly, we'll talk about how to let go of perfectionism and embrace progress instead. You'll hear real-life stories of women just like you who've broken free from impossible standards, along with science-backed tips to help you do the same. If you've ever felt trapped by the pressure to be perfect, this episode is for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And we want to hear from you. What's one thing you've let go of to live a freer, more fulfilling life? Drop it in the comments below. Let's dive in and discover how to reclaim your confidence, your energy, and your life, without perfection holding you back.
Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. You know, today we are tackling something that I think a lot of women out there, especially our listeners, can relate to: perfectionism.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And, you know, we're diving deep into all those great points from the How to Let Go of Perfectionism episode.
Mm-hmm.
But we wanted to kind of take a closer look at, you know, the ways that it can be particularly hard, maybe even harder for women.
Yeah, definitely. You know, anyone can struggle with perfectionism.
Right.
But for women, there are just all these pressures, these extra expectations, you know, that can really make it tough.
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about it. It's like we're always juggling, right? Career, kids, partners, friends, family.
Right.
And somehow we're supposed to be killing it in every single area.
It's a lot, yeah.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what we are talking about today, figuring out how to understand those pressures and finding some real, like, practical strategies to break free from that cycle. Because I think it's really important to say this right up front. Letting go of perfectionism.
Yeah.
It's not about lowering your standards.
No, not at all.
It's more about, you know, figuring out what success actually means for you.
Exactly. It's about defining success on your terms and finding a path that brings you real fulfillment.
I love that. A path to fulfillment. Okay, so let's unpack this perfectionism thing a little bit.
Okay.
Why is it such a common struggle? And why does it seem to hit women particularly hard?
Well, think about the messages that, you know, girls get, even from when they're really little. You know, that they're praised for being good, for behaving well, for doing well in school, for being helpful and nurturing, all these amazing qualities.
Yeah.
But it's like, it sets the stage for perfectionistic tendencies, you know?
Right. Almost like we're kind of programmed from the get-go to try to be flawless in every single thing we do.
Exactly. And as we grow up, these expectations from society, they just get more intense. Women are constantly bombarded with images of, like, the ideal woman, you know, successful in her career, perfect mom, effortlessly stylish, always put together. It is impossible. It's a standard that no one can actually achieve.
Right.
But so many women, they internalize it, and then they feel like they're constantly falling short.
Always like one step behind.
Right, always. And this constant striving, trying to reach this impossible ideal, it can just lead to chronic stress.
Oh, I can imagine.
Anxiety, burnout, even feeling like you're just not good enough, like you have low self-worth.
Yeah. So then how do we actually break free from this? It can feel so overwhelming.
It can.
But, you know, the How to Let Go of Perfectionism episode, they gave us some really practical solutions, and I want to talk about those.
Let's get into it.
So first up, we have redefining success,
Okay.
which is really about shifting away from those external measures of success, you know, what other people think,
Right.
and instead aligning with what really truly matters to you personally.
Exactly. And you know, the story of Clara, the teacher, is a great example of this.
Oh yeah, I love Clara's story.
Yeah. She was just pouring all of her energy into making these perfect lesson plans, staying up late, stressing over every tiny detail. It was just exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
And to be honest, it was sucking the joy out of teaching for her.
Yeah. I can see that. And it probably wasn't actually serving her students all that well either, right?
Not really. She realized that what really mattered, what made her feel successful as a teacher, wasn't having flawless plans. It was whether her students were actually engaged, if they were learning.
Yeah. So she had to kind of step back and redefine what success really meant, both in her job and in her life.
Exactly.
And what happened.
Well, when she stopped focusing so much on being perfect, and started focusing on engaging her students, she found that she could relax a bit more, enjoy teaching again. And her students, they actually started doing better.
It's so interesting, right? It's like letting go of perfectionism actually made her more effective as a teacher.
It did.
And I'm sure a lot happier too.
Oh, yeah. Way less stress.
Right. Okay, so on to the next strategy. Focusing on small wins. This one feels, I don't know, especially relevant today.
It does. We're always hearing about crushing it, achieving these massive goals.
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to forget about the small victories that happen along the way.
Right. But those small wins, they're so important.
They are.
Like, they help you build momentum, stay motivated.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Every small win is a deposit in your confidence account.
I love that.
It reminds you that you are capable, you are making progress, you are moving in the right direction.
It's like that little boost you need to keep going.
It is. And the story of Nora, she was feeling totally overwhelmed by her work.
Oh, I remember Nora.
She was so focused on the end goal that she couldn't even see the progress she was making every single day.
So what did she do?
She started acknowledging those small achievements, finishing a task, getting positive feedback, things like that.
Okay.
And just that small shift in perspective, it helped her feel more in control.
It's like taking time to appreciate the little steps forward.
It is.
Instead of being so focused on the finish line that you miss everything along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so this next one, this is a big one for me. Setting time limits.
Oh, that's a good one. It's about creating boundaries and realizing that we can't do everything.
Right.
At least not all at the same time.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking we need to give like 110% to everything.
Yeah.
That's just not sustainable, is it?
Not at all. It leads to burnout for sure.
So how do you set time limits? Like, what does that look like?
Well, it forces you to prioritize. It makes you more efficient with your time. And it helps you accept that sometimes good enough is actually good enough.
Good enough. That's like a revolutionary concept for a perfectionist.
I know, right?
But it's so freeing.
It is. And we see this with Emma, the graphic designer.
Okay, well.
She used to spend hours and hours tweaking designs, trying to make them absolutely perfect.
I've been there.
But then she started setting a 1-hour time limit for finalizing logos.
1 hour, wow. So like a constraint actually helped her be more productive.
It did. It forced her to make decisions, trust her gut, and let go of that need to constantly refine.
So not only did it free up her time, but it probably reduced her stress levels.
Big time.
You know what? I think that is such a good lesson for all of us,
I agree.
no matter what we do. Sometimes done truly is better than perfect.
100%. And by setting boundaries, you actually create more freedom and space for yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, that leads us right into our next strategy, which is good enough thinking.
Oh, yeah. That one can be a game changer.
For sure. Especially, for women who have been told their whole lives to strive for flawlessness.
It's tough to break free from that.
Yeah.
But good enough thinking, it challenges that all or nothing mindset, where it's either perfect or a complete failure.
Right.
But that's just not realistic.
Yeah.
And it sets us up for disappointment.
Yeah. It can also be paralyzing, if you're so afraid of doing something unless it's perfect. You end up not doing anything at all.
Exactly. And that's where good enough thinking comes in.
Right.
It encourages you to let go of that rigidity and embrace the idea that progress is more important than perfection.
So it's not about lowering your standards.
Yeah.
It's about being more realistic.
Yeah. It's about focusing on the 80% that really matters and letting go of that extra 20%.
It's about progress over perfection.
Exactly.
Like with Clara, the teacher. She realized her lesson plans didn't have to be masterpieces.
Right.
They just had to be good enough to get her students thinking and learning.
And by switching to that good enough mindset,
Yeah.
she got her time and energy back and she started enjoying her work again.
So sometimes good enough is more than enough.
Sometimes it is.
Okay, this next strategy, this one can be a little tough. accepting feedback as growth.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It is. Because as perfectionists, it can be so easy to take feedback personally.
It really can. And instead of seeing it as an opportunity to learn and grow, we see it as a judgment of our worth.
It's like that inner critic just goes into overdrive and amplifies every little perceived flaw.
And it's so harsh.
It is. But feedback, it's not a personal attack.
No, it's information. It can help us improve.
So if we can change how we see it and think of feedback as a gift,
Right.
it becomes less scary and more helpful.
Exactly.
Like with Nora, she was so terrified of criticism that she wouldn't share her work with clients until she thought it was perfect.
By doing that, she was missing out on valuable feedback.
That could have actually made her work even better.
Exactly. It's like navigating a maze in the dark.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You might eventually find your way out, but it's a lot easier if you have a little guidance.
Right. So when Nora started sharing her work earlier and getting that feedback, she could make adjustments along the way.
Yeah, and it saved her so much time and energy in the long run.
And I bet the quality of her work actually improved.
Oh, it definitely did.
So it's not about avoiding feedback.
Right.
It's about changing how we see it
Yeah.
and then using it to get better.
Exactly.
Okay, and last but definitely not least, we have developing self-compassion.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is. It's so important, but I think a lot of people, especially women, overlook it.
They do. It's like we're always being told to push ourselves harder, do more, never settle.
Right, right.
Ambition is great, but we need to balance it with self-care and self-compassion.
Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for burnout.
Exactly.
So what is self-compassion really?
It's treating yourself with kindness, understanding, grace.
Yeah.
The same way you would treat a friend who is going through a tough time.
Right, right. It's about accepting that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and those mistakes don't define us.
Exactly. And Emma's story is a perfect example of this.
Okay, what happened with Emma?
Well, she used to be really hard on herself after setbacks.
Oh, I do that too.
It's so common, but it just makes you feel worse.
It does, yeah.
But then she started journaling,
Oh, interesting.
and she would use it to reflect on difficult experiences and focus on what she learned from them.
Oh, so she could process those tough feelings without judging herself.
Exactly. It was like she was giving herself pep talks.
Oh.
And that shift, it made a huge difference. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, she could approach challenges with more resilience and a growth mindset.
It's like she was rewiring her brain to be kinder to herself.
Exactly.
So we have all these strategies, which are amazing,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to understand why they work, like the science behind it.
Absolutely. It can really help you stick with these practices when, there's solid research backing them up.
Okay, let's start with self-compassion theory,
Okay.
which was developed by Dr. Kristen Neff.
Right. And her research shows that self-compassion is key for reducing stress, being more resilient, and managing those unrealistic expectations that can fuel perfectionism.
So it's like a buffer against those negative thoughts. And when you can be kinder to yourself, you're less likely to get caught up in trying to be perfect all the time.
Exactly. And then there's Dr. Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset,
Oh, yes. Growth mindset.
which is all about focusing on learning and progress instead of just focusing on results.
Right. And that fits perfectly with letting go of perfectionism, doesn't it?
It does. A growth mindset helps you see challenges as opportunities to grow, setbacks as temporary.
Yeah.
And it helps you value effort over flawless results.
That's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, and then we have CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy,
Right.
which gives you tools for identifying and challenging those negative thought patterns that drive perfectionism.
It's so helpful. CBT can help you replace those self-critical thoughts with more realistic and balanced ones.
It's like retraining your brain to be more compassionate.
It is.
Okay, so we've got the strategies, we've got the science. What does all of this mean for our listeners? Like, what's the takeaway?
The takeaway is that perfectionism doesn't have to control you.
There are things you can do, real steps you can take to break free from it.
Yeah.
And by redefining success, celebrating those small wins, practicing self-compassion, and understanding the science behind it all, you can create a more fulfilling and balanced life.
It's about recognizing that perfectionism, even though it can feel like a strength,
Right.
can actually hold you back from real joy
Exactly.
and from feeling truly fulfilled.
It's about accepting that it's okay to be imperfect, celebrating progress and being kind to yourself.
Like you would be kind to a friend.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like giving yourself permission to be human, to mess up, to learn, to grow.
Exactly. And to celebrate all of it, imperfections and all.
Okay, I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay.
Think about one area of your life where you feel that pressure to be perfect. Where that inner critic just gets really loud.
It could be at work, in your relationships,
Right.
maybe even in your hobbies.
Wherever it is, just take a second to acknowledge that pressure.
Yeah. Notice it.
Yeah. And then ask yourself, how could you use just one of these strategies to let go of that need to be perfect?
Yeah.
How could you create a little more space for yourself, for growth, for being your true self?
How could you be a little kinder to yourself?
Exactly.
So what could you do? Could you redefine what success means in that area? Could you focus on celebrating those small wins?
Yeah.
Could you practice a little more self-compassion?
Any of those, even a tiny shift in your perspective, it can make a huge difference.
It really can.
Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being present, being authentic, being kind to yourself.
And about embracing the beautiful messiness of life.
Yeah, that's it.
That's our deep dive for today, everyone. We hope this is giving you some practical tools and a new way of thinking about perfectionism. We encourage you to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might also find it valuable. So until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep being amazing.
I love that. Embracing the messiness.
Right. It's so freeing.
It is.
So that's it for our deep dive today, everyone. We hope this has given you some new tools, some new ideas to think about when it comes to perfectionism.
Yeah, we hope it helps.
And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep being amazing.